Vanessa froze in the doorway, her bouquet nearly slipping from her hand when she saw the glittering backdrop with Tyler's name hanging in the center of the dining room, exactly where her mother had promised to place the cake for Vanessa's promotion dinner. The whole house seemed to burst with laughter, the pop of champagne, the pulse of upbeat music for her younger brother's new contract celebration, while the woman who had driven for hours to come home was swallowed by the shadows as if she had never existed. Elaine glanced at her daughter for only a second, her eyes skimming over the bouquet before stopping at the cake box in Vanessa's hands. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile meant for someone who had arrived just in time to help, not for a daughter stepping into one of the biggest milestones of her life. "You made it. Good. Go into the kitchen and help me bring out more plates." Vanessa did not answer right away. The evening chill from Nashville still clung to her coat, but it was nothing compared to the cold sliding through her chest. She looked at her father, Richard, patting Tyler on the shoulder with open pride. She looked at her brother standing in the glow of the lights, chin lifted, smiling like a man who had finally been recognized by the whole world. She looked at the gold-rimmed porcelain plate her mother had once said she was saving for Vanessa's special day. Tonight, it held a cake with Tyler's name on it. Something inside Vanessa did not shatter. It quietly turned to ice. She set the bouquet beside the sink so gently that not a single petal trembled. Then she walked into the kitchen, gathered more plates, and listened as her family praised Tyler as if they had just watched a new sun rise in their own home. "This contract will change his life. He finally has his chance. Tyler deserves to shine. And what about me?" The question crossed Vanessa's mind like a thin blade. But she knew her role too well. The steady daughter. The one who was always fine. The one who did not need longer hugs, louder congratulations, or greater attention. Because Vanessa could always take care of herself. At dinner, she sat at the dimmest end of the table. Someone asked casually about her work, but before Vanessa could say that she had just been promoted to director of operations after years of relentless effort, Tyler jumped in to talk about his new media campaign. Her mother laughed until tears filled her eyes. Her father raised his glass. Every gaze turned back to her brother. Vanessa smiled, but inside her, old memories were being stirred awake. Graduation ceremonies where no one arrived early for her. Tuition payments she covered in silence. Phone calls that only came when Tyler needed money, needed advice, needed someone to clean up the mess afterward. Her family did not hate her. That was what made it hurt more. They simply assumed she would always survive it. Before the celebration was even over, Vanessa stood and said she needed to return to her hotel because she had an early call in the morning. Elaine nodded as if it were a minor detail. Richard only told her to drive safely. Tyler did not even look up from his phone. Outside on the porch, the night wind struck her face as if trying to rip the calm mask from her skin. Vanessa climbed into her car, shut the door, and for the first time in years, allowed herself to sit still with the naked truth. She was not lacking in worth. She was simply living inside a house that had never learned how to see it. Back at the hotel, she slipped off her shoes, opened her laptop, and stared at the email confirming the equity bonus from her company's major deal. The words glowed in the dark room like a hidden door swinging open. Her fingers touched the screen, then moved to her phone. No more hesitation. No more asking permission. No more waiting for someone to acknowledge what she had become. That night, Vanessa placed a deposit on a graphite blue Porsche Taycan. The next morning, just as sunlight began to crawl through the curtains, her phone rang. Richard. He did not ask whether his daughter had slept well. He did not ask whether she was hurt. His voice was low and hard. "I just saw your post. What is going on with that car?" Vanessa sat up and looked at the city beyond the window. A strange feeling rose in her, painful and luminous at once. For years, her family had never panicked when she was the one being wounded. But the moment she touched the power she had built with her own hands, they lost their composure. She closed her eyes for a second, then answered in a voice so calm it surprised even her. "It is my car, Dad." Silence filled the line for a beat. Then Richard spoke, each word landing like stone. Sunday. 6 o'clock in the evening. The whole family is going to talk. The call ended. Vanessa lowered the phone and looked at her own faint reflection in the glass. The woman staring back at her no longer looked like the daughter who apologized for taking up space in her own home. And for the first time, she saw that truth as clearly as daylight. They were about to ask where she had found this kind of power. But the real question was why they had never noticed it had been there all along. Vanessa did not drive back to Charlotte right away. She sat in the hotel room with the curtains half open, the pale Nashville morning spilling across the carpet in thin strips of light, while her father's words still echoed in her ears like a command issued from an old throne he thought she would never stop kneeling before. Sunday. 6 o'clock in the evening. The whole family is going to talk. Not we need to talk. Not are you all right. Talk, as if she were a problem to be managed. For a long moment, Vanessa stared at her phone, then let out a laugh so soft it almost broke in the middle. It was not joy. It was the sound a woman makes when an old illusion finally dies. Even now, after forgetting the dinner they had promised her, after filling her special night with Tyler's name, their first instinct was not shame. It was control. She showered, dressed, and checked out before the city had fully awakened. On the drive home, the interstate unfurled before her in long gray ribbons, and with every mile, the numbness inside her gave way to something sharper. Memory. She remembered being 22 and sitting at the kitchen table with brochures for a graduate program spread in front of her. Richard had told her money was tight. Elaine had squeezed her hand and said maybe later, when things were easier. That same winter, Tyler got new camera equipment, a studio rental, and a trip to Los Angeles because he was trying to build something creative. Vanessa had told herself it was different. She had told herself family resources had to go where the need was greatest. Now the lie tasted bitter. By the time she reached her apartment in Charlotte, exhaustion clung to her bones, but sleep would not come. Her mind kept circling one ugly question. How many times had they taken from her and called it love? She opened her laptop again, this time not to look at her own success, but to look backward. Vanessa had always been the organized one, the daughter who saved every password, every scanned document, every account detail for the family archive because no one else could keep track of anything. Years ago, Richard had joked that she was the family vault. At the time, she had mistaken that for praise. Now she logged into the shared folder and began opening files one by one. At first it was small things. Statements. Transfers. Old tax documents. Then her breathing slowed. An account she had not thought about in years appeared on the screen. The education fund her grandfather had left for her. It had been meant for her graduate school, a quiet gesture from the only person in the family who had ever looked at Vanessa and seen how much she carried without complaint. The account had been closed 5 years earlier. Closed. Her fingers went cold. She dug deeper, opening transaction records, following account numbers, tracing transfers across years of polite silence and manufactured family urgency. The final recipient was not a hospital bill, not a mortgage payment, not some emergency that might at least have come wrapped in desperation. It was a business account linked to Tyler's media company. Vanessa leaned back slowly, as if the room itself had tilted. No. Then she saw more. Monthly payments for studio rent. Equipment purchases. Advertising. Flights. Hotel bookings. Dinner charges and cities Tyler had posted about online with captions about hustle, vision, and self-made dreams. Self-made. The word hit her so hard she had to shut her eyes. But the cruelest blow was not the money. It was a message thread she found buried in old records her mother had forwarded to herself years ago. Elaine had written to Vanessa's aunt, Marjorie, in the kind of tired honesty people only show when they think the right person is listening. Vanessa will be fine. She always is. Tyler is the one we have to protect. Vanessa stared at the sentence until the letters blurred. There it was. The family gospel. Not hidden. Not accidental. Written plainly in black and white. Her strength had never been admired. It had been used. Tyler was protected because he was fragile. Vanessa was sacrificed because she was not allowed to be. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the pounding of her own heart. She sat there with tears gathering but not falling, because even now some part of her was still trying to stay composed, still trying to deserve kindness by making herself easy to wound. Then she reached for her phone and called the one person she trusted most. Naomi answered on the second ring. They had been friends since the year Vanessa moved to Charlotte, meeting by accident at a continuing education seminar neither of them had wanted to attend. Naomi worked in financial compliance and had the particular patience of someone who had spent years reading documents other people hoped no one would ever read carefully. But what Vanessa valued most was not her skill with numbers. It was that Naomi had her own scar tissue. She had grown up in a family that leaned on her too, that called her the responsible one, the reliable one, the daughter who did not require much. She had rebuilt herself slowly and without fanfare, and she recognized the shape of that work in Vanessa long before Vanessa recognized it in herself. Vanessa did not say hello. Her voice came out low, steady, and more dangerous than grief. I found where the money went. And I think this is bigger than I thought. There was a pause. Not the pause of someone surprised, but of someone deciding how careful to be. Where are you? Naomi said. Home. Stay there. I will come tonight. Naomi met Vanessa that evening at her apartment rather than a bar. She had seen enough people in crisis make the mistake of airing their private wounds in public. She brought food Vanessa would not have thought to eat, set it on the kitchen counter without ceremony, and sat down. Vanessa told her everything. The education fund her grandfather had left for her. The transfers. The years of Tyler building his polished image on money that had never truly been his. The message from Elaine that hurt more than any bank record ever could. Vanessa will be fine. She always is. Tyler is the one we have to protect. Naomi listened without interrupting. When Vanessa finished, she was quiet for a moment. She picked up her glass and turned it slowly in her hands. I need to ask you something, she said at last. And I need you to answer honestly. Vanessa nodded. What do you actually want from Sunday? Not what you think you deserve. What do you want? Vanessa opened her mouth and then closed it again. It was not a question anyone had ever asked her in this house, or in this family, or in any room where she had ever tried to explain herself. I want them to know they cannot keep doing this, she said finally. Naomi set down her glass. Then that is what we prepare for. They spread the documents across the table, and Naomi began sorting through them with the cool precision of someone building a case. She had done this before, professionally and personally, and she did not reach for drama where fact would do the job. Then she stopped at one page and slid it forward. What is this? Vanessa leaned in, and her stomach tightened. It was an old business credit application linked to one of Tyler's early media ventures. Her name was woven into the paperwork just enough to strengthen it, enough to make her reputation part of the foundation. Not openly. Not honestly. Quietly. I never agreed to that, Vanessa whispered. Naomi gave a grim nod. I know. And if that venture had collapsed badly enough, your name could have been dragged into the fallout. Maybe not destroyed, but stained. Enough to raise questions. Enough to hurt. Vanessa stared at the paper. In that moment, the betrayal widened into something even uglier. It was not just her money they had treated as available. It was her future. Her discipline. Her identity. All of it had been used as if family meant shared ownership over whatever she built. No, she said softly. They really thought I would never look. Naomi gathered the papers into clean, deliberate stacks. They thought you would keep the peace even if you did. That sentence settled over Vanessa like a blade laid flat against skin. It was not her silence that had protected the family. It was her silence that had protected their version of her. So what do I do Sunday? Naomi looked at her with calm certainty. You do not walk in there like a daughter waiting to be judged. You walk in as the woman who finally knows exactly what happened. Let them talk first. Let them show you what they think this meeting is. Then you change the room. She paused, then added something quieter. And whatever happens in there, you do not owe them your composure. You just owe yourself the truth. The next afternoon, Vanessa drove to the Porsche dealership outside Charlotte. The building gleamed in steel and glass, polished to the point of unreality. Inside, the car waited under white light, sleek and silent, its graphite blue finish reflecting the room like dark water. Vanessa stopped in front of it and felt something shift in her chest. She had not bought this car to impress anyone. She had bought it because for one night, in one hotel room, she had grown tired of shrinking herself into something more digestible. The Porsche was not revenge. It was proof. Proof that the woman her family dismissed had built a life large enough to hold her without their permission. An associate guided her through the final steps, his voice smooth, professional, almost distant. Vanessa barely heard him. Her hand rested on the wheel, and the cream leather felt cool and clean beneath her fingers. For the first time in years, she touched something beautiful and did not immediately ask herself whether she deserved it. Her phone buzzed. Mom. Elaine's voice came sweet and strained. Honey, I just do not want Sunday to turn ugly. Your father is worried. This car, this post, all of it feels so unlike you. Vanessa looked out through the windshield, her reflection faint in the glass. Maybe you never really knew what I was like, she said. Silence. Then Elaine tried again, softer now. We are family. We do not need to make this into a confrontation. Vanessa's eyes dropped to the black folder resting on the passenger seat, neatly organized into sections. Education fund. Transfers. Credit documents. Messages. No, she said quietly. You just preferred it when I stayed quiet. She ended the call. Sunday evening, she drove into Nashville with the folder beside her. And the last light of day burning low across the highway. By the time she turned into her parents' driveway, the sky had gone amber and still. Tyler's oversized vehicle was already parked near the garage. Vanessa pulled the Porsche in behind it with slow, deliberate grace. The front door opened at once. Elaine stepped out first, then Richard, then Tyler behind them both. Vanessa saw the flicker of surprise in their faces before any of them spoke. Her mother recovered fastest. Did you read that for effect? Vanessa stepped out and closed the door softly. No, Mom. Richard's face hardened. Inside. Now. Vanessa reached into the passenger seat, lifted the black folder, and walked toward the house. Tyler watched the car. Richard watched her. Elaine watched the folder. In the living room, they took their places as if preparing for an intervention. Richard upright and severe. Elaine tense and wounded. Tyler trying to look amused. Vanessa sat across from them, calm as glass, and placed the folder on the coffee table. Richard folded his hands. We are here because your behavior has become concerning. Vanessa said nothing. Elaine leaned forward. We were embarrassed. People saw your post. They started asking questions. There it was. Not concern. Not apology. Embarrassment. Tyler gave a small laugh. If you were upset about dinner, you could have just said something instead of acting like this. Vanessa looked at him, then at all of them. At the room where she had spent years being underestimated. At the family who thought the shocking thing was the car, not the truth behind it. Then she slid the black folder forward across the table. If we are talking about financial decisions tonight, she said, her voice low and steady, then let us talk about all of them. Richard's expression barely changed when Vanessa slid the black folder across the table, but she saw it in his eyes. That brief flash. Not confusion. Recognition. He knew. The room held still for one breath, then two. Outside, a sprinkler clicked somewhere in the neighborhood, absurdly ordinary against the silence pressing down inside the house. Tyler leaned back against the sofa and forced out a laugh. Come on. What is this supposed to be? Some kind of performance. Vanessa did not look at him yet. She opened the folder with slow, deliberate care and placed the first document on the coffee table between them. My education fund, she said. Elaine's shoulders tightened. Richard glanced down at the paper, then away again, as if refusing to give it more weight would somehow make it lighter. Your grandfather left that money for my graduate school, Vanessa continued. It was closed years ago. The money was transferred into an account tied to Tyler's company. No one answered. Tyler's mouth opened, then shut again. His face shifted from mockery to something less readable. Not guilt exactly. More like a man watching the floor develop cracks beneath a chair he had sat in without question for years. Mom, he said, what is she talking about? Elaine turned to Richard first, not to Vanessa. Even now, her mother was not thinking about truth. She was thinking about alignment. About who would speak first. About how to contain the damage. Richard cleared his throat. The family was under pressure then. We made decisions based on what was needed. Vanessa gave a small nod, almost thoughtful. Needed by whom? Her father frowned. Do not do that. Do what? Turn this into some legal cross-examination. Vanessa's gaze hardened. It already was one. They just had not known it until now. She reached into the folder and laid down the transfer records. Then the equipment invoices. Then the rent statements. A neat row of evidence, each sheet placed with the precision of a blade. Studio rent. Production equipment. Advertising costs. Flights. Hotels. Tyler stared at the documents. A stillness came over him that had nothing to do with innocence. Vanessa had expected defiance from him. What she had not expected was this, Tyler going quiet in a way that looked almost like shame. He picked up one of the pages. An invoice dated 5 years back. He turned it over as if hoping the other side would say something different. That was support, Richard said, his voice rising slightly. Your brother was trying to build something. So was I, Vanessa said. Elaine let out a brittle breath. That is not fair. Vanessa turned to her at last. No, Mom. Fair would have been asking me before you took what was mine and handed it to him. Elaine's eyes filled at once, almost automatically, and Vanessa felt the old instinct tug at her. The old reflex to soften, to retreat, to become the steady daughter again so her mother would not have to sit inside discomfort. This time she did not move. Tyler set the invoice down slowly. He did not look at their parents when he spoke. How much, he said quietly. Richard told him to stay out of it. Tyler looked up. His voice had changed. The performance was gone. How much of her money went into my company, Dad? Richard did not answer. Tyler turned to Vanessa then, and for a moment the two of them looked at each other across the coffee table without the old architecture of their family between them. She saw something in his face she had not expected. Not the entitled younger brother she had been carrying in her mind for years. Just a man who had started to understand that the foundation beneath everything he thought he had built on his own terms was not what he had believed it to be. I did not know, he said. Vanessa held his gaze. I know you didn't. It was the hardest thing she had said all evening. She pulled out the printed message thread and placed it on top of the others. Elaine saw her own words and went pale. Vanessa will be fine. She always is. Tyler is the one we have to protect. The room seemed to contract around the sentence. You were always fine, Elaine whispered. You were always the strong one. Vanessa felt that sentence cut deeper than any denial could have. Exactly. Her voice was soft, but it stopped everyone. I was fine because I had to be. I was strong because there was no room in this house for me to be anything else. Every time Tyler fell apart, you gathered around him like he was breakable glass. Every time I succeeded, you treated it like proof that I did not need anything. Not support. Not celebration. Not protection. Do you understand what that does to a person over a lifetime? Elaine covered her mouth. Richard said nothing. Vanessa reached into the folder one final time and drew out the old credit application Naomi had flagged. She slid it toward Richard. And this is where it stops being just cruel and starts becoming dangerous. Richard's face changed the moment he saw it. Vanessa caught it. The color leaving his skin. The slight tremor in his hand. Tyler looked from the page to his father. What is that? Vanessa did not raise her voice. She did not need to. That is paperwork from one of Tyler's early business ventures. My name was attached to it without my knowledge. My financial credibility was used to strengthen an application I never agreed to be part of. If that deal had collapsed badly enough, my name could have gone down with it. Tyler stood up. The coffee table rattled. What? He turned on Richard, all performance stripped away. You used her name. We did what we had to do, Richard snapped. The sentence fell through the room like something breaking. Vanessa rose slowly to her feet. No, Dad. You did what was easiest. There is a difference. Her hands were steady now. Steadier than they had ever been in this house. Here's what happens next, she said. You will repay every dollar you took from the fund my grandfather left me. You will never use my name, my credit, my accounts, or my information again. And from this moment on, none of you has access to any part of my financial life. Elaine looked up at her through tears, wounded and bewildered, as if Vanessa were the one breaking something sacred. You would do this to your family. Vanessa picked up the folder and held it against her chest. No, she said. This family did this to me. I am just the first person in this room willing to say it out loud. The house stayed silent after Vanessa spoke. She did not wait to see what they would do with it. She took her folder, walked to the front door, and stepped out into the cooling Tennessee evening. The porch light spilled over the steps in a soft yellow circle, and the Porsche waited in the driveway, dark and still. When she slid into the driver's seat and shut the door, the quiet wrapped around her. Her hands rested on the wheel. She sat there for a moment without starting the engine. Inside the house, she could imagine how the silence was fracturing. Elaine beginning to cry. Richard standing rigid near the fireplace. Tyler still holding that invoice, turning it over in his hands. What she could not have predicted, and would not learn until later, was that Tyler was the one who spoke first after she left. That he asked their parents questions they had never expected to answer to him. That something shifted in that living room once she was no longer in it to absorb the damage, once there was no steady daughter to quietly make everything easier. She did not know that yet. She only knew what she felt sitting in the car in the dark. It was not triumph. It was closer to exhaustion, the particular kind that comes after you have been holding something heavy for years and have finally put it down. The ache was still there. It would be there for a long time. But underneath it was something she had not felt in this driveway since she was a child. Room. Room to breathe. Room to exist at full size. She started the engine and pulled out of the driveway. The next few weeks were difficult. Elaine sent long messages at midnight, paragraphs swinging wildly between apology and accusation. I did my best. Families are complicated. Tyler was struggling. You were always so strong. I never meant to hurt you. How can you be this cold? Richard's texts were shorter, stiffer. Name a number. Let us be practical. Tyler called once. He did not try to explain himself. He asked only one question. Is there anything I can do? Vanessa stood at her kitchen window for a long time before she answered. I do not know yet, she said. But asking is a start. She changed every password. Closed old access points. Moved accounts. Updated legal documents. Met with a financial advisor and then with a therapist, where she began to untangle the difference between the strength she had built and the endurance that had been required of her before she was old enough to choose. She called Naomi on a Thursday evening, not because anything had gone wrong but because something had gone right and she had not known how to receive it. Her company had offered her a seat at a leadership retreat, and her first instinct had been to wonder if she had done enough to deserve it. The old reflex. The old arithmetic. Naomi let her talk until the impulse ran out. Then she said, very simply, you earned it. Go. Vanessa laughed for the first time in weeks. It surprised her with how clean it sounded. 3 months later, Richard called. His voice had changed. It was lower, roughened around the edges. I sold the cabin, he said. Vanessa said nothing. There was a pause, then he continued more slowly. Part of the money is already being transferred to your account. The rest will follow when I liquidate one of the investment funds. She closed her eyes. She saw the lake cabin of her childhood, the place where Tyler had once been praised for skipping stones while she set the table inside. Another monument, now being dismantled. Not to punish him, she understood. He was doing it because it was the only concrete language he had ever learned for accountability. And Tyler, she asked. Richard exhaled. He is working now. Sound engineering. It is not what he imagined for himself, but he is showing up. Vanessa leaned back and looked at the Charlotte skyline. She did not feel satisfaction exactly. She felt the complicated weight of watching real consequences arrive, which was different from revenge and harder to celebrate. Richard cleared his throat. I was wrong. The words came out stiffly, as if they had never been practiced in his life. Because they hadn't been. I told myself you were fine because it made it easier not to look too closely. I told myself Tyler needed more because he demanded more. I stopped asking whether what I called your strength was really something we kept taking from you. Vanessa pressed her lips together. The tears came and she did not stop them. I do not know if I can forgive you yet, she said. I am not sure I am supposed to know that right now. Richard was quiet for a moment. Then he said, and it was the most honest thing he had said to her in years, I am not asking you to pretend. After the call, she sat for a long time in the stillness of her apartment. The pain was still there. She did not expect it to vanish. But it had changed texture. It was no longer the pain of a woman waiting to be seen by people who had already decided how to look at her. It was the pain of someone who had finally looked clearly at herself and decided she was worth the trouble of telling the truth. She had not won because they suffered. She had not won because her father finally said the right words or because Tyler finally asked the right question. She had won the moment she walked into that house on Sunday evening without asking permission to take up the space she had always deserved. The rest was just the slow, unfinished work of figuring out what to do with that freedom now that it was hers.